and these young people coming up, JJ, and they stay addicted to their porn. Not only will they lose their own hearts, not only that, but we're gonna lose this country because we have a window here.
We are the number one consumer of child pornography. We rape children ad nauseum. We allow the elites to rape our children, and we say nothing. Because why, Jack? And I will tell you this as clear as day. Because we are, as a Christian group of men, we are cowards. Outside the Christian man, I don't care. The Christian man has been so feminized. They are so effeminate. They are so afraid to say the truth. We have become castrated. We are a group of effeminate cowards as a group of Christian men, and that is the truth.
These young guys that we're meeting now, so I got a Claymore sword behind me, JJ. That's an apostolate we have for young men, Gen Z, that are starting to sense something's wrong. They voted for Trump, to your point, but they don't know exactly what's going on, right? So we reach out to them. 100% of those young boys have been exposed to hardcore pornography, JJ, and they did it most of the time in their innocence. Welcome to the Become Who You Are podcast, a production of the John Paul II Renewal Center. You know, we've been on the front lines fighting what we call stolen innocence, a presentation that we do, standing up in our society and our culture against a culture and a society that robs children of their innocence, obliterates their moral imaginations, uses them as objects in vile and despicable ways. Our guest today has stood up in the face of this evil and has courageously and tirelessly fought for children. I'm really excited to bring him on. J.J. Carroll is retired from the United States Border Patrol after a 24-year career as Deputy Patrol Agent in charge of the San Diego sector. J.J. brings a different view on immigration and what is, and especially what was, transpiring on our nation's border, and uses his experience to articulate who created this disastrous situation on the border, how these policies were enacted, and why these intentional policies implemented in the United States. And he has a couple of bestsellers out, Invaded, the Intentional Destruction of the American Immigration System, and in Treason, the Biden Administration's Strategic and Malicious Destruction of American Sovereignty. JJ's also released 2 documentaries. I'll link this all up in the show notes that expose the traitors that run our government, the evil of child sex trafficking, and the peril the United States of America now finds herself in. JJ, it's so good to be with you. Thank you for your courage, man, because I know as a group ourselves standing up against this is not easy, is it?
No, and it's not like it's not easy to talk, to stand up. It's just after over time you get desensitized, but it's such a dirty topic, and it's dirty and it's uncomfortable because it's evil. So I appreciate you having the courage and to tackle this topic and to allow me to come on and speak about it, because it is uncomfortable. It is, when you start laying blame too, it gets uncomfortable, especially for us Catholics.
Yeah. Well, this isn't a partisan issue. I watched your testimony, and maybe you could describe that a little bit, JJ, because you testified in front of Congress about what the federal government, and I'll just read a couple of notes that I put down. You stated that the federal government, our federal government under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, is the world's largest sex trafficking organization in modern history. And you said the probability that thousands of these children are being raped at this moment is 100%. And you said that in front of Congress. I was really astounded when I heard that. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So I did a documentary called "What is Treason Trafficked?" In combination of my 24 years in the United States Border Patrol, where I saw child sex trafficking, but nothing, absolutely nothing at the level under Joe Biden. Under Joe Biden, it was an epidemic. They did it intentionally and strategically. They brought in over 550,000 unaccompanied alien children called UACs, from literally infants, just born babies, to 17 years old, and they lost them all of them, not some of them, all of them. Now, because of Donald Trump, and I think he is the greatest border president in the history of America. That's not my feelings. That's just a factual truth. When he brought in his cabinet, And because of his Doge actions and his executive actions, I have been professionally validated. I don't take any joy in it. I wish you and I were talking about how I was so grossly wrong that all these children are safe and everything's great and our politicians are wonderful people, but that's a lie. RFK Jr. came out in front of Congress under testimony, sworn testimony, and he stated almost verbatim what you just said. The United States government is the largest child sex trafficking organization in history, that his predecessor, Javier Becerra, the former secretary of HHS, Health and Human Services, trafficked children. I mean, he has said this repeatedly, and yet no one has been arrested. I put enough information out with my business partner, Ryan Matta, on this documentary and the 2 books that I've written that could at least get someone indicted. There's enough evidence to put people in jail. Our government trafficked children. It's not even a question of, well, what's the severity? No. Our government trafficked unaccompanied alien children into America. Let me give you one data point that will stick out. Under Donald Trump, my last year in the United States Border Patrol was Joe Biden's first year, so I witnessed everything I'm talking about firsthand. Under Donald Trump, any kind of unaccompanied alien children was handled with kid gloves, meaning if you had a sponsor,
So let me stop you here for a second, because those with TDS, right, with Trump derangement syndrome, people that we push back. This is important because this is from his first term. You're talking about his first term, what he already had in place, and
Yes.
then when Biden came in. So I'll let you pick it up again. But I just want to say there's a big difference here, wasn't there? There's a huge switch that went on.
Well, it wasn't just that. This was evil. So under Donald Trump, we would have it tightly regulated. Sponsors were background checked. There was DNA testing, everything. So we had about 20 to 30,000 children that last year. And those were not Donald Trump's problem. That was because Joe Biden began to open the border through his rhetoric before he took over. Under Joe Biden, his first year, 140,000 children poured across the border. And every year thereafter, it gained steam and got more. You know what he did the very first time when he came in office? He removed the DNA testing. He removed background checks. We have no idea
JJ,
where anybody is.
Remember when Trump was his first time, back in 16 to 20, right? And so people were, I remember the Democrats and these people coming after Trump and saying he's separating the children from their families. What he was doing and what you guys were doing is doing this testing and finding out that these weren't the parents of these kids, right?
Yeah, I love the Democrats. And I'm going to say it straight out. I vote Republican because I have to. There's no one else to vote for. But I despise my government. My government is, the people that run it are evil. And I will say this without hesitation. The Democrat Party is evil. They're demonic. There's no other explanation. And I watched it. I lived it. I watched their lies, their incessant lies that we were separating families. No. We were taking the pedophiles away from the children. That's what we were doing. But they wanted us to keep the pedophiles with the children.
And they knew this, JJ.
Of course they knew. This is everything that I'm saying to you has already been validated and verified 10 ways to Sunday. Our government did this on purpose. I watched it. I'm not some talking head. Yes, I'm an author. Yes, I'm on TV, et cetera, but I'm not a talking head on Fox News. I didn't learn about the border through a book. I lived it. I was not some administrative guy. I was a task force operator all the way to senior leadership. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know how they did it. I understand why they did it and who did this to America. The Democrat Party with the collaboration and the funding from the Republicans, Speaker Johnson, etc. This is a uniparty issue. You would think that we, the American people, the representatives, would try to go find these children. Do you know how many children they found under Donald Trump so far? 13,000. 13,000. They've already arrested 442 people that were child trafficking all these kids. 13,000. That's a drop in the bucket. And I will tell you this, and I will validate this, what Donald Trump said many, many times. A lot of them are already dead. And he's true. A lot of them are already dead. And if we're really good Christians, we're going to get on our knees and we're going to pray to God that all of them are dead. because you don't want any of them to go through any of the pain and suffering that they went through.
You describe somewhere, and I don't remember if it's from one of your books or one of your testimonies, of one of these child hunters, and I want to know a little bit more about them, JJ. But can you describe, because I want to put these numbers are huge, but I want you to describe, how they find these children. Like you just said, you almost hope that they're not alive because of what they go through. These young children. Can you talk a little bit about that? I want to let our audience know what these kids are going through.
So in my documentary, What is Treason Trafficking, I interview a gentleman named Basil Baz, and he was a former CIA, and they call them war hunters, war fighters in the military, special forces. And he has a group of men that go out and look for the kids. And I call him like a child hunter. He goes out and finds the people the people being trafficked. And I asked him, I said, I want to know, like, I've seen the front end, right? Meaning I've seen the trafficking of the children, finding the children from the predators, right? But I've never gone down into the houses and the basements and the dungeons and the trafficking sites. I said, I want to know what it looks like, smells like, and sounds like. And he says, well, you got to understand, before we get on this conversation, nobody is making love. There isn't two consenting adults that are touching each other and loving each other under, the marriage or some love. He says, this is abuse. This is, I'm going to break their jaw. I'm going to burn cigarette butts on them. I'm going to break their arms. I'm going to take a grown man. And he said this, and it's in the documentary, and it's very important to say this, even though it's graphic. He says, I need you to understand and visualize what it looks like after a grown man who has an erection penetrates a 3-year-old girl anally and vaginally and orally. What happens to that child? That man's body, that child's body is not built to be penetrated that way. So what you do is you have massive trauma to the vaginal area, the anus, and the mouth. And then they get extraordinary STDs. Their bodies are ripped to shreds. All their genitals are ripped to shreds. They can't take them to the hospital because they're mandatory reporters. So what do they do in order to continue to sell these children's bodies and rape them themselves? Well, they shoot them up with drugs so they don't cry anymore. And he says, this is what it looks like. This is how it goes down. And I asked, and I want your audience to understand how the depth of this problem. I asked multiple people I interviewed, FBI agents, USCIS, child hunters across the board.
USCIS,
I'm sorry, it's the United
border,
States,
right? Customs
no,
border.
United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. These were the main traffickers under HHS and DHS. So I asked these gentlemen, I said, individually,
this is FBI agents,
DHS agents, and former war fighters and guys that have all the alphabets behind their names, CIA, etc. I asked all these men separately, and I asked Basil this first. I said, listen, I'm the president. I'm going to make you the child rescue czar. How many officers do you need to start? And I thought he was going to say, 15,000, 20,000. He says, I will start with 500,000. And I said, what did you just say? He said, yes, I need 500 to start, and then I'll tell you how many more I need after that. I was like, it's that prevalent? He goes, the problem is bigger than you can ever imagine. I talked to a gentleman that did child sex trafficking, FBI agent, whistleblower. I asked him the same thing, and he says, without telling him what Basil said, he goes, yeah, I will start with about 500,000. What? He goes, when you peel back the first layer, the depth of the child trafficking and the pedophilia is beyond anything that you can even fathom. So let's talk this. Let's be open.
Yeah.
Right now, the number one consumer of child pornography in the world is America.
Wait, I almost have to take a breath. I mean, this is how pervasive it is. And I don't want to stop you here, but this is pervasive because when you start to follow the money, and I don't want to get ahead of you, but I'm very interested in your story, and so I've been looking things up. When you start to follow the money, JJ, this is pervasive, isn't it?
Well, that's why. Number one consumer of child pornography in the world, America. Number one exporter of any pornography in the world is America, and the top nation that pays money to rape children is America. Now, with that knowledge, I want to tell you, in 24 years, United States Border Patrol, and 100 years of our agency's existence, carved out of that 4 years under Joe Biden, never, never, never did the narco smugglers even dabble in human smuggling. They hate it. They were subservient to the narco smugglers. No one wants to deal with people, right? Just in everyday life, you don't want to deal with people because they get sick, they're bitching and complaining, everything. So the narcotic smugglers just want to smuggle product. However, when President Biden came in office, he removed 80% coverage of the border, meaning at any given day, any given time of the day, 80%, 1,600 miles of the 2,000-mile southern border was left completely unprotected. So, and then the federal government took away all the cost and all the risk and said, if you can bring the child over to the border, we will take him or her, turn him over to an NGO, Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services, Lutheran Family Services, and then they will traffic that child back to you, the cartels. So all of a sudden, the cartels, the narco smugglers took over the child trafficking. Why? Why? Because of money. Because now there was no impediment to trafficking children. The federal government, through the NGOs, Catholic Charities, would transport the child from Mexico, the border, into America. And why would the cartels want children of all things? Well, because if I'm a narco smuggler and I smuggle cocaine, I can sell that package of cocaine or heroin one time. One time hit and it's gone. It's in my my buyer system, it's gone. However, I can take little Juan from Guatemala, or Susie from Germany, or Mohammed from Sudan, and I could sell that kid's body 20 times a day. And at the end of a year, I could earn $200,000 to $250,000 off of that one little body until I rape that child to death. And yes, they're raped to death. Can you imagine that way of dying? So the cartels dabbled in this because our federal government allowed it, and all of the religious organizations cloaked in the banner of God traffic these children.
So this is how this is diabolical. This is evil. These drug traffickers don't even want to deal with this. Then we facilitate this. So that means our nation facilitated this. To your earlier point, the NGOs, Catholic Charities, Lutheran, right? You and I are Catholic. You're Catholic, right?
Yes,
I think
I am.
You are. Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I spoke out against Catholic Charities a number of times and said, look, we got to stop donating to Catholic Charities, etc.
Mm-hmm.
People can't believe it. And that's why I want to make this point. People don't believe it when you say that, no, without Catholic Charities and these other organizations, this couldn't have happened the way it did. Of course, and at the same time facilitating the open border. And then the third thing I'll make, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but there has to be a market here, and you expressed that already. There's so much pedophilia and pornography in this country. I have so many questions, JJ. I'm just throw it and see what you feel like unpacking, brother. I'm sorry to throw so much at you.
No. This is how the depth of this problem is so great. Let's start with the NGOs, and you made a point that is absolutely spot on. Without the NGOs, none of the open border could have ever materialized and happened. Let me explain. There are not enough Border Patrol agents, ICE officers, ERO, Customs and Border Protection personnel to transport 30 million people. That's how many people crossed the border in 4 years. The government says 18 million. If you believe the government, you're a fool. I'm telling you from all of my sources and experience, it was 30 million. There's 50 million illegal aliens living in America right now. But under Joe Biden, they allowed 30 million. How do you move 30 million people? You have to contract with the Catholic Charities and Jewish Family Services. Let me tell you about the money, okay, just so you have an idea. So I had a colleague that worked inside DHS, and he was responsible for paying Jewish Family Services, okay? And they were a major player in the NGO world. He was paying them $600 million every 2 to 3 months. And I asked him, wait a minute, Catholic Charities,
$600 million.
We're looking at billions. You're looking at tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars through USAID. So this is what's amazing is Elon Musk uncovered USAID, and USAID took tens of, if not hundreds of billions of dollars down south, funded George Soros and all the anti-American NGOs to bring the people to the border. Then our government laundered the money through DHS, through FEMA, and FEMA paid the NGOs, the domestic NGOs, to move the people from the border to the interior. Let me give you one data point. And as a Catholic, it makes me want to vomit. How much money did Catholic Charities get minimum this, and I don't really believe this number is anywhere near, but this is what they're claiming. From 2009 to 2024, at the end of Joe Biden's term, they received $5.2 billion to move refugees. $5.2 billion.
So let's just, before you make your next point, let's just sit on that for a second. That much money is running through Catholic Charities to move these children who they lost. AJ, you can't make this stuff up, can you? And I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I want our audience just to sit. This is a huge number.
Okay, but it gets worse. So you're at $5.2 billion between 2009 and 2024. Same time frame. How much money did the Catholic Church pay out to their sexual abuse victims? $5.2 billion. There is now people writing articles and research papers on the fact that Joe Biden backdoored money to the Catholic Church to pay off their debts so they wouldn't have to sell their land and churches. And if anyone dares to contradict me and say, well, Catholic Charities and the Catholic Church are two different entities, you're a fool. Every Catholic Charities organization, subgroup, whatever you want to call it, has a U.S. bishop tied to them. And I want to follow up.
And they raise, and those dioceses raise money.
Yes, they do.
I was involved in my diocese. They were doing a capital campaign, and they wanted to give money to Catholic Charities. I was in a position to say no, because I know some of the things that you're describing right now, and so we didn't. But we were literally pushing a capital campaign, or getting ready to fund Catholic Charities, until I brought these things to light for our diocese, and they pushed back. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, you even go one step further, and I've written about this. Do you know at one point, I still think it's the same. I haven't seen anything that disputes what I'm saying. 90% of the Catholic bishops are registered Democrats. Do you know that?
I didn't know that, but
90%.
But unfortunately, I'm not surprised.
And now every bishop now is coming out and saying that. In fact, I just wrote an article in my Substack that the bishops are claiming and calling ICE officers and Border Patrol agents like myself Nazis, and that we will pay in time because we're Nazis in the way we do things. I'm a Catholic, and people say to me all the time, why are you still a Catholic? Because I'm not going to turn over my faith to a bunch of charlatan traitors. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to root them out. Somehow I'm going to find a way to root them out. And I think all faiths, now let me be very clear. When I'm talking about just Catholic Charities, understand every faith-based organization got a piece of the pie, all the way down to Southern Baptists, the Lutherans, the Jews, Seventh-day Adventists took money. Every religion organization colored under God sold their soul for 30 pieces of silver and trafficked women, children, and men into America. At the very least, they trafficked people into slavery, labor slavery. And the worst, they had them put in positions that they committed sexual slavery and then were murdered. And that is going to lay at the feet of every religion in the United States of America. And it is sickening.
When you start to think the market here, JJ, so look, I remember Pope Francis and these bishops, to your point, and I'm trying not to throw them under the bus, but just, the reality is the reality. open border policy, right? He was pushing it at the Vatican, open border policy. Same thing you said, the bishops were pushing this. And as you're pushing this, I wonder to myself, and I'm not asking you to answer this, but we have the deep state that you were describing, we have the deep church, we have this moral corruption going in. Why don't you leave the church? Why? Because we're called to stand up. It's really, in a way, it's a privilege to stand up, and in a way, it's a scary thing that you think that we're kind of the last line of defense, and it's not only against the deep state and the deep church, but my last tie-in here would be there has to be a lot of moral bankrupt citizens in the United States. When I'm out presenting, and I know you must have come up against this too, they're vile. They come after you. I want to, at some point, I want to ask you what it was like to be in front of Congress, because I don't know if I could do it, but I just hear this in presentations that we do, JJ. People stand up and call you, like I said, Nazis, perverts, whatever the name is, right? And in the name of compassion, right? In the name of compassion, we're trying to save the kids. And you see this pedophilia, the pornography, the using of these children underneath this, and it's almost undescribable. But you're doing a pretty good job at describing it, so thank you.
Well, the people that I interviewed and I've spoken to, and in my experience as well, many people told me, had to pause me because I was trying to not rush, but I was just going from interview to interview to interview across state lines, trying to get the concept of what was happening. And they would tell me, people with the alphabets behind their names, so you can figure that out, saying to me, intel guys, you need to understand, JJ, that congressmen, senators, and presidents are pedophiles.
We're going to ask you to join us by helping us get the word out. So if you can make sure you subscribe and then hit like, no matter which platform you're on. Remember that the Become Who You Are podcast is on audio, on any music or podcast app. We're up on Rumble, YouTube. You can find us on X. When you do, subscribe, hit the like button.
And they would tell me, people with the alphabets behind their names, so you can figure that out, saying to me, intel guys, you need to understand, JJ, that congressmen, senators, and presidents are pedophiles. And the ones that are not pedophiles know who the pedophiles are and remain silent, and therefore they become complicit and can be coerced and blackmailed. And that is absolutely the truth. You have that in the Catholic Church. You have that in religious organizations. The politicians are pedophiles. Look at Jeffrey Epstein. Look at P. Diddy. You think that they're the only honeypots going on in America? Or you have to be that naive? I want you to understand there's a connection to all the child sex trafficking, all the pedophilia. And then you talk about America, the shiny city on the hill. I believe in MAGA, Make America Great Again. If you believe in that slogan, then you have to admit that America is not great. And I openly admit America is not great right now. You can't be. You cannot be the largest consumer of child pornography. You cannot demand cheap labor. You cannot be one of the biggest consumers of hard narcotics in the world and say that you're great. Do you know how many people, sir, it must take to consume hundreds of millions of videos and pictures of children being sexually abused? Do you know how many people it takes to consume that much pornography? That means there are millions of pedophiles in America.
Yeah,
millions.
And this gets pushed down, JJ, all the way into our government schools now. It's amazing. You know, when we stand up against these national, I know this is a little off tangent, but it all ties in together. When we stand up against these national sex ed standards and things that they're pushing on our kids, when you talk about the LGBTQ agenda and stuff, right beneath it is pornography.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I ask people, I said, watch the books that that they're giving your kids to read in these libraries and stuff. It's always going to be sexually explicit. And here's my point. These young guys that we're meeting now, so I got a Claymore sword behind me, JJ. That's an apostolate we have for young men, Gen Z, that are starting to sense something's wrong. They voted for Trump, to your point, but they don't know exactly what's going on, right? So we reach out to them. And we talk to them about these things. 100% of those young boys have been exposed to hardcore pornography, JJ. And they did it most of the time in their innocence. we're talking about innocent kids here, trafficked over the border. There are innocent kids in the United States that are being sexually exploited,
Yes.
and right under our own noses. But that problem too. It's not only illegal children, right? I mean, children are being sexually exploited at numbers that are astronomical.
Well, if you stop for a second and think about, make a delineation, which I don't really care if you're a legal or illegal child, it doesn't matter to me, but I can quantify that. You can't quantify how many U.S. citizen children are being raped or sexually assaulted, because guess what? They don't count that. They don't take that, quantify it. And why don't they? I talked to people and they said, I asked them, why is the number of lost children every year so broad? 400 to 800,000 children go missing every year. So let's play the game.
Just in the United States?
Just in the United States.
Wait, 400 to 800,000.
Okay. Now, a lot of them are runaways and they're found. However, every year, let's say that the government is 90% wrong. Let's take the low end, 400,000. The federal government is 90% runaways and they find them. That leaves 40,000 children have disappeared, Jack. Disappeared. A year. Let's say that I'm crazy. Let's say they're 99% wrong. That leaves 4,000 children disappeared, meaning they just floated off of planet Earth and they're gone. Every year, over year, over year, that's an entire elementary and middle school vanishing. 2 or 3 every year, vanishing. And no one says a damn word. No one says anything. Why? Because our nation is riddled with sexual perversion. Another thing you talked about, this is child sex trafficking, child organ harvesting, child mutilation, child sacrifice. A lot of people are telling me that you need to stop looking at the south-north corridor and start looking north to south. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, what do I mean is they're taking our children and they're selling them. And they're selling them for their organs because their organs are less parasitic. And doctors that I've spoken to said, yes, that is actually a belief, that our children have less parasites, so their organs are better. And where are these children? Listen, our government traces everything. If there is a cow that has a disease or a chicken, they can trace it back to the actual farm and then trace it to the meat packing plant, then take it and then trace where every piece of that chicken or cow went to whatever market. They can trace everything, but they can't trace children. Is that amazing? How I've never lost my son. I lost my son for 3 seconds in a grocery store. He turned the wrong corner. 3 seconds. I have never, ever lost my son. How in God's name do you lose 550,000 children across the border and thousands of children every single year? Why and how? Is because they are being trafficked. And Americans do not put any value on children anymore. They don't. There is none.
JJ, that's a mouthful. And that's why, when I first got into this, I got into this with a guy named Tom Hampson. Tom Hampson's a crime investigator, went undercover for child sex trafficking, child porn, and we do this presentation, Stolen Innocence, together. One time, years ago, before we started this, I said, Tom, I don't know how do you stop this? And he says, you can't arrest your way out of it, JJ. He said the numbers, to your point, are astronomical. You can do the best you can, but we got to start to educate people, and this is what you're doing. Let me ask you this: when you were testifying in front of Congress and bringing up these points, has anybody ever pushed back? Because you wrote books, you did documentaries. Do people call you a liar? And if they do, what comes out of that? I mean, everything I hear that you're saying seems factual. I've done as much homework as I could on all this because I do this for a living too, and even checking your numbers and stuff, and everything seems right on. I mean, what kind of pushback do you get, and what is that like when you're testifying in front of Congress? And you must know that a lot of these people sitting in front of you are evil themselves.
Yes. Well, all of my books, I have not had a cease and desist. I haven't been sued. I haven't been challenged outright Why? Because everything that I have written and put on air and talk about, I citate everything. So you don't like what I say? You don't like that I wear a black shirt and do my hair this way? Okay. But what is it that you don't agree with? Well, nothing. I just don't like you. And that's what it was like in front of Congress. I want your audience to understand that my greatest fear and my greatest belief was confirmed, that the dumbest people in our society are in positions of our leaders and our representatives in government, the dumbest people. And I'm talking both sides. I'm looking at the Republican side, and they are nothing but exactly what you would think is pasty old white guys that have no understanding, zero understanding of what's going on. Over to the left side, the Democrats, they have no care in the world about what we're talking about. And then what do? They attack the message, the messenger, not the message. So I spent, this is unbelievable, and it's been proven now. There's a congresswoman named Delia Ramirez, and she spent her 5 minutes castigating me, vile names, just slandering me, and you can't do anything. You can't talk. You have to just take it. And then she said, and I'll never forget this till the day that I die. She said, and I'm almost quoting this, I put this in my book, I don't ever want to talk about women being raped on the border again because it's so horrible, because my mother was raped crossing the border illegally with me in her belly. She admitted in front of Congress that she's an illegal alien. So I have an illegal alien chastising me in front of Congress. I will tell you that Congress has no care in the world to fix this problem. In fact, I'll go one step further. Do you know what Clay Higgins, who I used to have respect for, not anymore, he was a former sheriff in Louisiana. Do you know what that man asked me after I got done testifying? When he came up to me, I thought, okay, he's going to ask me to come into a back room and have a law enforcement discussion about what needs to happen. No, you know what his question was to me? Hey, JJ, do you want a picture? No, you jackass. I don't want a picture with you. No, you're not famous. You're nobody to me. You're a nothing. You've done nothing in your time in Congress. You're in the Homeland Security Committee, and you don't even have the courage to look at your fellow committee member on Homeland Security that's an illegal alien. And you've run these same child sex trafficking testimonies for at least 7-8 times, and you've done nothing. Why do they not do anything? Why? The answer is because they themselves are pedophiles. We're riddled with it. Do you think, Jack, that just because we have a massive homosexual problem and child pedophilia problem in the Catholic Church, and we have it in entertainment and media and sports, that somehow our political people are immune from this sick disease? Or can you get in the realm of reality and understand, yes, it's infected everyone else. Of course, it's infected the soulless people that are our politicians.
Wow. I don't want to let you go until in here today, until we talk a little bit about what we can do, because what you're describing can seem hopeless. I mean, it's a huge thing. When I'm talking to these young guys, JJ, and I want you to help me talk to these guys, because they have to understand what you're saying here, that there is nobody else. We have to stand up, and we have to stop the porn ourselves, right? We have to start looking at our own moral consciences. You got to grab that sword, and that sword is not to attack out there first, JJ, is it? It's to attack your own heart. John Paul would say the battle always starts in the individual human heart between love and lust, becoming a self-giving person who cares about others and using them lustfully as objects, right? And this is very, very true. If we don't stand up, you and I and the people that are listening, and these young people coming up, JJ, and they stay addicted to their porn, not only will they lose their own hearts, not only that, but we're gonna lose this country, because we have a window here. And I want to ask you about this. We have a window here with the MAGA movement, right? With Donald Trump coming in, you start to understand how much pressure he was in under that first term that he was in. Now he knows better. If Kamala Harris was in right now, or Joe Biden was in right now, JJ, I mean, and when you talk about the moral corrupt nation that we're in, and the last thing I'll say is Bishop Sheen talked about this in 1970s. he said of the 22 major civilizations all throughout history, 19 of them came down not because of outside forces, but because of the moral corruption inside. And we were there. We still are there on the precipice, aren't we?
We are, and we have a window. And I honestly believe this. I believe that St. Michael the Archangel or some spirit, Holy Spirit, came down and moved Donald Trump's head and allowed him to survive that. And God needed him to survive. I believe God has chosen him as he's chosen people throughout the Old Testament, the way Jesus chose his disciples. They're flawed men, all of them. And he needed someone strong to take that mantle, and Donald Trump is that. But I believe God he's looking at his stopwatch, and he's like, okay, my children are being raped and brutalized, and you're not doing enough. And I think there will come a time when God heard our prayers, and he gave us a reprieve. But there will come a time very, very soon that God will say, I've had enough. I've waited long enough, and you are impotent, you are gutless, and you are a coward group of people, and now I'm going to rain judgment on you. And you say, what do you do as a young man? Well, you need to become educated. I'm not talking about going to get formal education. You need to know what the hell's going on in the world. You need to have the courage to understand what you believe in and your ability to articulate it. Like I tell my son, it's not good enough, Joseph, to believe in God. It's not good enough to believe in a republic government. It's not good enough to just know the 10 Commandments. You have to articulate them clearly to the world, because you are the enemy of the world. You are a Christian, white man, and you will be demonized throughout your life. You must be able to fight intellectually as well as physically, because you will be attacked on all fronts. If you do not look at the world today and do not believe that Satan is prowling this earth, you are a complete moron. It is so clear that we are not in a war of Republican versus Democrat. We are in a war of God versus Satan, period. And if you push back on me, then I'm going to just line item it out. 60 million kids aborted. Just last week, Governor Walz signed a bill to allow you to kill a baby at 9 months. You are mutilating children's bodies at the point of they're being Frankenstein. We're going to have a mass suicide event in American history in the next decade, when all these people become adults and have no sexual pleasure and their bodies have been mutilated. We are the number one consumer of child pornography. We rape children ad nauseum. We allow the elites to rape our children, and we say nothing. Because why, Jack? And I will tell you this as clear as day. Because we are, as a Christian group of men, we are cowards. Outside the Christian man, I don't care. The Christian man has been so feminized. They are so effeminate. They are so afraid to say the truth. We have become castrated. We are a group of effeminate cowards as a group of Christian men, and that is the truth. And I know it's hard to hear, but if we're going to speak truth, then let's go all the way.
JJ, thank you for that. What a wonderful way. We're hitting a time stop, I know, here. It went way, way too fast, brother. I got to get you back on again. But that was inspiring, what you just said. I got goosebumps because you're giving the message. We can't pull any punches here anymore. We don't have time. I'll just reiterate again to our audience. Donald Trump, JJ's right on. He gave us a window. We've talked about this on this show before. I feel this so strongly. But that window is for us. It's not just for, Trump. He's bringing a lot of good people in, but this is our window to stand up, like you said. And if we don't do it now, we're going to look back at our own lives. I'm going to be an old man, JJ, sitting in a rocking chair, looking back on all the couldas, wouldas, shouldas, and I'll just look at you again, and I say, you must have a tremendous amount of courage for you to stand up for the truth like you did. You took this on. You didn't know if Biden and Kamala Harris were going to stay in office. You didn't know that when you started working on all of these things. You could have been taken down, brother. We've seen a lot of that happening, right? A lot of Catholics taken down, just praying outside of abortion clinics. People at school board meetings were taken down. How you stood up like that, it takes a lot of courage. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for the time today. I appreciate it. It's a tough topic, but something has to talk about it.
Give us the links. Give us where we can go. I'll make sure I get these in the show notes. But why don't you tell us real quick how we can find those books, how we can look at that video for that. I want people to watch that congressional hearing, etc.
The best place to go is just go to my website, jjcarroll.com, jjcarrell.com. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, God bless you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.